Good morning, and welcome to our Sunday service at First Parish Plymouth, Unitarian Universalist. My name is Erin Cruz. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I want to tell you that on your order of service, I need to make a correction on that prelude. The people singing did not include Irene Rhea, but did include Sandi, Hammond, Emily, Browder, Melville, and Bethany, whose last name I saw. Silence. We're so glad you're here today. It feels such a wonderful energy, people coming in, reuniting, seeing friends we haven't seen for a while. And you are certainly very welcome here today, whoever you are, whatever you believe or don't believe, whomever you love, wherever you're from. Come walk with us this hour.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Reverend Arthur Lavoie. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I want to also welcome you. This is our first Sunday back in the chapel because of construction that will be happening at the meeting house. So we will be here for several months now. On the piano here, there are a bunch of these masks. So if people want to sing the hymns, I invite you to get masked. And we'll be wearing these to sing if you don't have one of them.
Raise your hand if you feel like singing it.
And I want to offer a special welcome this morning to those who are watching us, a recorded version of this service on our YouTube channel, on Facebook, or on one of the local public access TV stations. We are delighted to have you with us, and as I said, this will be the space that we are in for the next few months. You've been used to seeing filming of this service in the Pilgrim Memorial Meeting House, which is undergoing some construction beginning this week, so that's why we are in this space. We are delighted to have you join our First Parish community, and please contact us. If you have any questions, or if you would like to make a donation, or be in contact with me. So thank you all very much for being here.
The worship now begins with a call to worship by the Old Testament prophet Isaiah. Is not this the fast that I chose, to loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil. If you offer your food to the hungry, and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. And now if you would like to, please stand for the hymn number 298, Wake Now in the Census. The reading of this hymn has been chosen to fit with the theme of our October services, which is courage. And Reverend Art's theme today is conscience.
Please remain standing for our chalice lighting as Luke and Eva will be lighting the chalice for us this morning. And please repeat with me the words of our chalice lighting. Love
is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Good morning. I have a story for you. One more evening many years ago, after spending nearly every waking moment with Angel for 8 straight days, I knew that I had to tell her just one thing. So late at night, just before she fell asleep, I whispered in her ear. She smiles, the kind of smile that makes me smile back, and she said, "When I'm 75 and I think about my life and what it was like to be young, I hope I can remember this very moment." A few seconds later, she closed her eyes and fell asleep. The room was peaceful, almost quiet, silent. All I could hear was the soft purr of her breathing. I stayed awake thinking about the time we'd spent together and all the choices in our lives that made this moment possible. And at some point, I realized that it didn't matter what we had done or where we had gone, nor did the future hold any significance. All that mattered was the serenity of the moment, just being with her and breathing with her. We must not allow the clock, the calendar, and external pressures to rule our lives and blind us to the fact that each individual moment of our lives is a beautiful mystery and miracle, especially those moments we spend in the presence of loved ones. There are breathing exercises, breathing tools, breathing classes, and even a book called Breathing Is My Superpower. This short story is about breathing. We don't know who's telling the story. We don't know why breathing is so important at this moment. We don't know what the relationship was truly between these two people, and we don't need to. All we need to do is breathe and listen. Today, the children and I are going on our journey of learning and discovery, where we're going to learn about self-care, and we're going to learn about breathing as self-care. So children, let's go.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
I apologize that the reading that's listed in your order of service is incorrect. I changed the reading after I gave Jean that information. This morning's reading is titled Map of the Journey in Progress by the Reverend Victoria Safford.
You need to imagine a big map and someone's showing you the journey in progress. This is by Victoria E. Safford, as Bernard said. Here is where I found my voice. and chose to be brave. Here's a place where I forgave someone against my better judgment, and I survived that, and unexpectedly, amazingly, I became wiser. Here's where I was once forgiven, was ready for once in my life to receive forgiveness and to be transformed. And I survived that also. I lived to tell the tale. This is the place where I said no, more loudly than I thought I ever could. And everybody stared. But I said no, loudly, anyway, because I knew it must be said. And those staring settled down into harmless, ineffective grumbling. And over me, they had no power anymore. Here's a time, and here's another, when I laid down my fear and walked right on into it, right up to my neck, into that rolling water. Here is where cruelty taught me something, and here's where I was first astonished by gratuitous compassion and knew it for the miracle it was, the requirement it is. It was a trembling time. And here, much later, is where I returned the blessing clumsily. It wasn't hard, but I was unaccustomed. It cycled round, and as best I could, I sent it back on out, passed the gift along. This circular motion around and around has no apparent end. Here's a place, a murky puddle, where I have stumbled more than once and fallen. I don't know yet what to learn there. On this site, I was outraged, and the rage sustains me still. It clarifies my seeing. And here's where something caught me, a warm breeze in late winter, birdsong in late summer. Here's where I was told that something was wrong with my eyes, that I see the world strangely. And here's where I said, yes, I know. I walk in beauty. Here's where I began to look with my own eyes and listen with my ears and sing my own song, shaky as it is. Here is where, as if by surgeon's knife, my heart was opened up. And here, and here, and here, and here, these are the landmarks of conversion. This next musical number is sung by Erin, Finnegan, Natalie, Sheeler. Rachel Breen couldn't be here today, and so Sandi Hammond is stepping in.
So our liturgical theme for the month of October is courage. And I suggested that beautiful hymn to Sandi, and of course with Hurricane Ian kind of passing through, the metaphor is more apt than just the issue of courage and the storms in our life passing over. In August, I did a sermon in which I spoke of my own call to justice. One story I told happened while I was in high school, and I found the courage to confront my father about his racist language and behavior regarding the first African-American family to move to our town. It was difficult. It was painful, but also personally rewarding to take that step. My faith, growing up as a Catholic kid, at that time was based on biblical social justice teachings. My faith led me to the point where I couldn't sit by and allow him to react the way he did. My faith led me to have the courage to risk some ostracism, some hard feelings from my family. Even though it was frightening, I am very glad today that I took that step, and many others, to align my behavior with my values. In the reading that Karen just shared, Victoria Safford can mark some of the specific places, kind of a roadmap on her own journey of self-discovery, on her own journey to find her voice. As she describes in the reading, it takes courage and bravery to lay down fear, being able to forgive and accept forgiveness and say no and say yes, and feel the painful opening of our hearts as we might feel a surgeon's knife, while still knowing that there are murky puddles that we will always struggle to find our way through without stumbling and falling. Yes, the call of justice, the call of our conscience can be painful, can be challenging, can be very scary, especially in a society with lots of expectations about who we are supposed to be. We risk judgment and ridicule, but even in the midst of that, I have found myself feeling much more happiness and fulfillment every time I have taken the risk to follow my conscience and face the world as my own truer self. I invite you to think about those places that mark your roadmap to self-discovery, self-fulfillment, being able to share your own voice. When did you have to take a leap of faith or leap into a void to be and become your truer self? What was that like? What are the feelings that came up for you then and the feelings that you might have now about it? What was lost? And more importantly, what was gained? Another high school experience came to mind when I wrote those questions. I was in my senior year, a Cathedral High School in Springfield, a regional Catholic high school. It was the mid-1970s. There were great changes happening in this post-Vatican Council era. The language of the Mass was now in English. Religious orders and religious life were rethinking their mission as the nuns gave up their habits and were more involved in the community. One of the most popular teachers in the school, a layman who taught in the theology department, one day we came to school to find out that he had been fired by our local bishop. We were devastated. It seemed there was no due process, and even the other teachers in that department and throughout the school were appalled at what happened. We found out that the reason given for his firing was that he had played a recording in class by the comedian George Carlin. Some of us are old enough to remember George Carlin, where Carlin talked about the 7 words you can't say on TV. The theology courses for seniors that semester were based on exploring ethics and morality. I can still remember that class, made all that more memorable by the firing of our teacher. The playing of that recording led to an amazing discussion about words, about the power of language to hurt, to heal, to dehumanize. We also talked about how fear and misguided notions of morality affect our lives and the kind of words we use. It was very, very powerful. A committee of faculty met with the bishop to explain again the educational importance of that lesson. They tried to no avail to convince him to reinstate the teacher. What were we to do? The power of peaceful protest was a big part of that era, fueled by protests against the Vietnam War and the turmoil of the late 60s and early 70s. Easter was coming. So a faculty and student committee planned a protest vigil outside of the bishop's residence on Good Friday from noon to 3, commonly understood to be the time when Jesus was hanging on the cross. Once again, my conscience called me to be involved, to make a decision. Once again, I found the courage to act and participate in the demonstration with friends and beloved teachers. I was very proud of myself. Being a teenager, knowing that this would be seen as an act of rebellion, I couldn't help but announce at the dinner table that my family might see me on the evening news. I almost got thrown out by my father for that one. But I knew ahead of time that if I did, I could live with my grandparents. My grandmother might yell at me, saying that I was maluca na cabeça, my grandmother was Portuguese, which translates as sick in the head. And that was her favorite expression when she scolded us. But she would not have hesitated to give me a hug and take me in. My grandfather would have chuckled, shaken his head, perhaps remembering some of the things that he did in his earlier years. One of the most important things for all of us to remember when taking a courageous leap to follow our conscience is to know where we can turn for support. We may not always need it, but it always helps to know what our options are if we find ourselves in trouble. What are the limits of our social justice activism? How are we to judge, to assess the call of conscience? Sometimes it's difficult to see the difference between conscience and ego. Sometimes when we take a stand, we can be looking out for our own power and influence, rather than moving toward a social justice cause that gives voice to some oppression. I'd suggest that there are 3 criteria when discerning what action to take when our conscience calls. First, on what ground do you stand? Second, who do you stand for? And third, who stands with you? First, on what ground do we stand when we respond to the call of our conscience? What is the religious, moral, philosophical ground that upholds us? Do we stand in the midst of a prophetic religious tradition or philosophical-based stream of thought? Or are we just wanting to further our own gains or our own ego? Number 2, who do you stand for? Are you blazing a trail for freedom for others, even perhaps for yourself? Do you, if you are, do you have actual contact with those people? Do you know what they want, what their voice is asking for? Are you naming a social ill, standing for the cause of justice, or peace, or equality that might benefit yourself or someone else? And third, who stands with you? Look around at your comrades in this struggle. Are they people you respect and trust? Are they people who ask these questions of themselves? Or are they more interested in commanding attention, standing on their proverbial soapbox to enhance their own power and privilege? When we get in the habit of following our conscience, of finding our voice, of using personal power to serve our vision of who we should be, we realize this doesn't have to involve things that bring a lot of risk. Sometimes it's just doing the right thing to help somebody else. I've seen a lot of that here in this congregation. Providing meals and rides for people, a listening ear, just being there for each other in lots of different ways. That's a call of that inner voice that we respond to. Another story. One of my brothers is a rocket scientist, literally. Graduated from MIT, he has worked for NASA most of his life. He lives in Huntsville, Alabama, where there is a large NASA facility, and by the way, one of the best aerospace museums that offers summer programs for children and youth. About 35 years ago, he was engaged to be married, and we were all invited to the wedding. Since his fiance's family was from Georgia, they decided to have their wedding in Huntsville, where they lived. Many of us in my extended family were planning to attend. My maternal grandfather, the one I spoke of earlier, was having some health problems. He had to be very careful about what he ate and that he got enough rest. The family had determined that he was too fragile to attend the wedding. In talking with him, I realized that he wanted to go. He was always up for an adventure, and he was angry about being treated like some fragile knick-knack on a shelf. I called my brother in Alabama and found out that by the time of the wedding, he will have moved out of his condo and into his fiance's home, but would not have yet sold the condo and moved all the furniture. So we set up a plan for me to stay at the condo with my grandparents for the weekend so that my grandmother could prepare the kinds of food that my grandfather needed for his diet. I would rent a car for the three of us. At first, members of the family squawked, but we could all see how happy my grandfather was about this plan. So that's what we did. We all had a great time, and he returned happy and just as healthy as when he left. It really doesn't take much to follow our conscience, to look out for others, and to lift their spirits. Audre Lorde, who died in 1992, was an African-American writer, womanist, radical feminist, professor, and civil rights activist. She described herself as a black, lesbian, mother, warrior, poet. Many years ago, I found a postcard with an image of Audre Lorde with her arms spread wide, and there was a quote of hers on the postcard which read, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid." I had that postcard pinned to the wall above my desk for many years. That quote helped me to answer my call to become a minister, to uproot my entire life, and move to Berkeley, California to attend seminary several years ago. I still have that postcard. I think of it often when I am facing a difficult challenge. May you all find and know something, a quote, a mentor or friend, a piece of music perhaps, that can be that same kind of touchstone for you when answering the call of your own conscience. Amen. And blessed be. So I invite us to read Mass and turn to one of my favorite and our favorite hymns, number 121, in the great hymnal, "We'll Build a Land." Please rise as willing and able. are already in the process of working together to build that room. I invite us all this morning to remember what it is that calls us forward, what it is that gives us strength for our journey, and what are the roadmaps, the markers along the way that are going to get us back to the place we want to be. Amen? Let's be. And this is now, after the postlude, will be the end of the recorded portion of the service.